Alright, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a news roundup video, and today we have a ton to talk about as we are darting all around the shop. So gonna be a long one today, but starting off with Star Wars. This story has got quite a lot of attention, and it's an interesting one because, well, yes, you have the fans of the sequels who would have absolutely have loved this, but to be honest, the more interesting thing is that you have a lot of people who weren't so down with the sequels also heavily in support of this or contributing to the backlash of this. So it's one of those odd times where you see a bit more unification in this fandom that was, well, split quite down the middle quite a while ago now. Now, what am I talking about? Well, this is the scrapped The Hunt for Ben Solo movie that we've just heard about. And this has even got to the point of where fans have now got a plane to fly over Disney Studios with a hashtag Save the Hunt for Ben Solo banner. So like, this is how much things are kicking off. So from the Variety article, they say, in a recent sit down with AP, Driver said over the span of 2 years, he and Soderbergh developed a script called The Hunt for Ben Solo. The film would have taken place after the events of the Rise of Skywalker and followed Driver's Kylo Ren, aka Ben Solo, on a search for redemption. I was always interested in doing another Star Wars, Driver said. I had been talking about doing another one since 2021. Kathleen Kennedy had reached out. I always said, with a great director and a great story, I'd be there in a second. I loved that character and loved playing him. Soderbergh and Driver pitched The Hunt for Ben Solo to Kathleen Kennedy, Dave Filoni, and Carrie Beckett Lucasfilm, who loved the idea. However, when they took the script over to Disney, they were shut down. And this is where, like, the kind of outrage begins. We presented the script to Lucasfilm. They loved the idea, Driver recalled. They totally understood our angle and why we were doing it. But we took it to Bob Iger and Alan Bergman, and they said no. They didn't see how Ben Solo was alive, and that was that. So I think this reaction comes from the pool of, no matter what you want to say about Star Wars under Disney, and we all know it definitely hasn't been smooth sailing trying to get fans on the same page, this is the kind of project where even if you weren't too keen on the sequels, Adam Driver was still, I would say, a more agreed upon and enjoyed thing for a lot of fans. So now hearing him talk about this pitch in the way he did just goes to inflame the already seemingly chronic backlash Disney faces year after year for how they handle the Star Wars IP. Now, for me, I do get that side, and I agree, out of the sequel movies, Adam Driver's Kylo Ren was one of the most interesting things that I took out of it. So if this movie did get made, you know, it could have had that potential to have strengthened something from the foundations of which was very up in the air for a lot of fans. Do I love the sequels? Do I not like the sequels? Oh, but maybe if they went this direction, there could have been a bit of harnessing what was there in terms of potential. Now, as for Bob Iger supposedly just shutting it down because they didn't see how Ben Solo was alive and that was that, the people handling the Star Wars storytelling process should absolutely be left with that decision, not the person who has hired those people to make those decisions, but doesn't let them make that decision to interject kind of anyway. Now, to play devil's advocate here, though, maybe the reasoning behind it is that he's been so put off by the previous decisions of Lucasfilm when it came to the sequels that he felt the need to interject this time on the prospect of this story. That's the only thing I can kind of think of there. But at the same time, even though a part of me likes the idea of this movie and how it could have been a more enjoyed one across the fandom coming out of the sequels, I would have also have been a little bit like, but he kind of did die, and Star Wars already has more than enough issues of people coming back from the dead, making things there less meaningful. It doesn't really matter if you kind of get poked by a lightsaber. I know it's a little bit more nuanced than that, but you have to meet me in the middle there somewhere and agree that stuff like that is becoming a little bit less, you know, serious in Star Wars. And so I don't really know where I truly land on the idea of Kylo Ren carrying on. I know that obviously would have been a part of the Hunt for Ben Solo, like they would have likely utilized the world between worlds, and it would have been about how, due to his choices at the end of Rise of Skywalker, he meets Anakin in the world between worlds, and it's revealed that he still has a chance for life because good boy, I guess. And maybe he meets Luke in the world between worlds and there's like a mutual forgiveness and all of that. I get it, but still not entirely sure about it. Now, Soderbergh tells AP of the experience, "I really enjoyed making the movie in my head. I'm just sorry the fans won't get to see it." Driver agreed, calling the project one of the coolest scripts I had ever been a part of. That's, that's quite, you can imagine why there's a lot of people getting to the point of flying banners now. But let me know what you guys think there. Now, up next in today's news roundup, we've got a brand new trailer for Predator Badlands, and I have to say, I really enjoyed the look that we got from the previous one, but this one just went even further. I think for me, this latest trailer does just such a fantastic job at ramping up the Predator carnage even more. I really enjoyed the way it was just also cut with the music. I just think the movie has a fantastic concept with us just getting to see a young Predator prove himself to his clan by going through this journey that is seemingly way out of his depth, with us hearing Ellie Fanning's synth even saying, "Many of your kind have come here, none have survived." And yet Dek means business on this death planet, as you can see here. And I've said this before, I cannot wait to see that frickin' bow in action. But failure in of itself also means death, so there's only one direction ahead for Dek, and that means success at any cost by taking down that big ass thing that I forget the name of now. So just a brief segment here, but go check out this trailer if you haven't had the chance to see it already, because it really gets you pumped for Predator Badlands, which is landing in theaters November 7th. Let me know if you're gonna go see it and if you're excited for it. Now up next, we got some new posters for Fallout Season 2. So just very briefly here, but I have no idea how many of you have played the games, but for me, Fallout, like growing up, playing Fallout 3 back in 2008, then going into my favorite one, Fallout New Vegas in 2010. Those were some of the highlights of video gaming for me in my teenage years. So seeing Lucy and the Ghoul getting into New Vegas this season is just much hype for me. Now, I know these are just posters, but for the Fallout geeks out there, they show Lucy, first of all, surrounded by Caesar's Legion, and they're pretty much a faction of pretty bad people in the Mojave Wasteland, to say the least. And it looks like after the events of the game, they have garnered even more control in their conquest, although it does remain to be seen exactly how events unfolded at the end of Fallout New Vegas, given that there's multiple endings. Then, for the Ghoul, we have him surrounded by the Kings. Now, these guys were a smaller faction and gang within New Vegas, where they had their own little HQ called the King's School of Impersonation in Freeside. Now, I'm a big Elvis Presley fan, so I always appreciated that back then. The thing is, given what we see at the end of Fallout Season 1 and that New Vegas, it doesn't look like it's prospering. In fact, the opposite. It seems like the Kings here, and from the trailer, are quite feral. Now, personally, I really hope that they're not written off as some kind of simple enemies for Lucy and the Ghoul to take out, but rather, they can interact with a few who maybe aren't so feral. And then, of course, we have Max among the Brotherhood of Steel. Now, given that he was promoted to Knight at the end of Season 1, and yet the Brotherhood wasn't exactly everything he thought it would be, I'm really looking forward to seeing his journey in Season 2. And then, of course, we have Dogmeat surrounded by a bunch of rad scorpions, which is a pleasant addition to Season 2. I don't think we had them in Season 1, unless I'm going crazy. And more on that, I want to see a bit more of these mutated things from the post-apocalyptic wasteland. I know we saw some things, and I think these things are going to be pretty nasty, but I am still praying for some looks at some super mutants in Season 2. I don't know why we haven't done that already, just because, out of, CGI things that we've seen, super mutants, you can just kind of put heavy prosthetic makeup on, massive hench people, and they would be so good. To any Fallout fans out there, how much do you want to see super mutants in Season 2? So up next, before we get into some DC news, this is kind of related, obviously, but from Deadline here, the WGA plans to help block potential Warner Brothers Discovery Paramount merger. A disaster. The Guild expresses their intention to block the merger after Paramount's second bid. They go on to say that they will work with regulators to block the merger. Now, I don't know how much power they would really have with stuff like this. Again, this is something I think I would need to look into even more, but obviously with them facing, or regulators facing heavy pressure and hearing maybe good reasons as to why this, isn't the ideal situation, as we've already gone over. I recommend checking out my video yesterday talking about all the bids, where we're up to date with that, but also how this could impact DC in the future. But back to this, it's a messy thing, because we're also hearing from the New York Post that the Trump administration favors Paramount Skydance to buy Warner Brothers Discovery. Supposedly, who owns Warner Brothers Discovery is very important to the administration, a senior Trump administration official told On the Money. The Warner board needs to think very seriously, not just on the price competition, but which player in the suitor pool has been successful getting a deal done. And that points to the Ellisons. Now, don't get me started on, okay, well, there's regulators that, obviously the WGA are going to try and speak to. There's this, that, and the other, but, there's antitrust. But if you're kind of friends with, and you're in the president's corner, well, maybe, maybe this isn't something that we would rule out, and that's the thing. And I think this is what I've been saying as well. Like, it does seem to be more Paramount's thing that will eventually happen. Obviously, I will keep you posted. Seems like updates are happening every day. If you want more of a little bit of a deep dive, check out yesterday's video. We need to go into the land of DC now, starting off with the Brave and the Bold. So this is coming from Variety, summarized by DC Film News here over on Twitter. Go follow them if you haven't done so already. Though we can't talk about it yet, Andy Muschietti may have said too much, confirming the Brave and the Bold is still at play. So if you go over to the article, further in it says, meanwhile, I did ask the Muschiettis for an update on their Batman movie. The intention is yes, but we can't talk about it, Barbara said when I asked if the film was still happening. Andy said, we have to wait a couple of months to start talking about it. But then he realized even that may have been too much information. I screwed it already. So this has me super intrigued. Like, obviously, okay, first of all, they're like, but yeah, the intention is yes. I don't think that's the whole idea of is the movie even happening at all? I think, yeah, the movie, in one way or another, because we're hearing about changes, which we're talking about next, is happening. Their response is more, is your Brave and the Bold happening with you guys? The intention is yes, but we can't talk about it. But then he says we have to wait and then he corrects himself, a couple. So, like, he literally went a few to a couple of months to start talking about it, and then thinks he screwed up by even saying that much. Now, I've always said that, like, Brave and the Bold, or whatever the DCU Batman movie will eventually be, can go into production, obviously, even though the Batman Part 2 is coming out in 2027. Like, obviously, we've already heard they wouldn't release in the same calendar year, but that's fine. Like, I've always said 2028 at the earliest, so maybe we could hear about some more firm DCU Batman stuff sooner rather than later, especially given that the script has been worked on for quite a long time now. But what would we hear in a couple of months? That's still a bit early in my mind, unless you want to kind of dive into the rabbit hole of theories about, well, I have said if we're not going to get a DCU Batman movie, his own movie, until 2028 at the earliest, would there have been conversations about ways to incorporate Bruce Wayne in the DCU, so that actor, his character, in a movie before then? I don't know. I don't really want to, I kind of want to reel it back a bit. I don't want to read that much out of what Andy Muschietti said here, but the fact he even said at all, we have to wait a couple of months to start talking about it. Well, I suppose that doesn't mean we're going to hear about it, but they're still going to wait a couple of months to start talking about it. I know some people already will be like, are they waiting a couple of months to start talking about it because they don't know if a DCU is even going to be a thing by 2028 or whatever? I don't know if it's so much about that. Like, you could even argue just as much that, well, a couple of months to a few months would also be that much closer to the wheels turning on production for Man of Tomorrow. So I don't know, guys. In all honesty, with this one, it is very, very ambiguous. Now, speaking of DC Batman, there's been another report going around out of another interview that James Gunn had with Emergency Awesome. So, from DC Film News here, James Gunn confirms the Brave and the Bold hasn't cast as Batman yet, and that the story has undergone major changes since the film was first announced. Now, The thing about this is, I don't know, honestly, if this is Emergency Awesome saying that he heard that from his interview, because when I watched Emergency Awesome's interview, he says that he even knew that he wasn't going to answer a ton of questions about Batman. So he goes on to say that they haven't cast an actor yet, which we know, but they have changed a lot of what the story was going to be since he announced that a couple of years ago. And he says that he's already done a couple of videos on that. So he's kind of talking, to me, that reads like he's talking about existing news. You don't actually see an interview clip of when Gunn said that. That's just Charlie actually just saying that. So what is that? Well, this goes back to a story that we actually heard not so long ago in an interview with IGN talking about this very thing. So I think there's a lot of reports going on out there which thinks that it's a new thing, but really it's just that video from Charlie was talking about this already existing news. Sorry about the convoluted explanation there, but really you'll see what I mean. In this article, IGN says, considering The Brave and the Bold, as it was originally announced, would pair Batman with his son Damian Wayne, who's about 10 years old in the comics, does that mean the DCU's Bruce Wayne, and hence the actor who will play him, will be in his mid to late 30s? Gunn says, no, I think you will have to wait to see the movie. Some things have changed. So, long story short here, nothing much has changed with the story overall. It's just a echo of what Gunn said with how things have changed with the Brave and the Bold script. And, you know, I still don't know. Obviously, none of us know what that is exactly. When I first talked about this in a video around the time, I was like, well, it could be a bunch of things that have changed, but I still think Damian would be in it. Like, Gunn was so, like, gung-ho about that being a story that he was passionate about telling. I could understand it because we're in a DCU where, like, Hal Jordan is a Lantern legend. Superman, granted, is only 3 years in, but you can clearly see we're in a lived-in world. So heroes have been out there for a while, and Batman could still be, like, 36 if they want to adjust some chronology there and have Damian Wayne. So some things have changed. They don't have to change that, but on the other hand, to play devil's advocate, yeah, maybe things have changed with the whole Damian Wayne side of it. And granted, he could still be in the movie. He might not be the kind of core of it, and it might not be so much about going full in depth about exploring the father and son relationship. But all of that, I need to remind everyone, is just conjecture. Like, that's just a theory. Like, some things have changed. Okay, what has changed from the original announcement of Brave and the Bold? I'm still inclined to believe that the things that could have changed maybe could still relate to, okay, when it was first announced in January of 2023, they thought that it would be coming out sooner. As simple as that, because also the Batman Part 2 was coming out much sooner, right? It would have actually already have been out by now, but no, we've still got 2 more years to wait. So, harkening back to what I was saying, maybe some things have changed if they want to introduce Batman a little bit sooner. Maybe somehow that impacts his own movie in some other way. But I'm going to shut up about this because we could just really keep going around in circles. But I would love to hear your ideas down in the comments below. Now, in another one of James Gunn's interviews, and I believe he had this one with New Rockstars and also Screen Crush in the Call, James Gunn said that Darkseid won't be the big bad of the DCU, praising Zack Snyder's take and noting parallels to Thanos. Using Darkseid as the big bad now is not necessarily the thing because Zack did it so cool and in his way, and because of Thanos and Marvel. So when you look at that clip, like, it's a bit more expanded than that, but that is really the nutshell of it. And I completely agree. I know not everyone is on the same page here, but to me, I have always said, like, day dot, when it came to questions in a discussion series that I run here on the channel, whenever anyone asked me about Big Bad, could it be Darkseid, I've always said, I just don't see them doing Darkseid. A, because Zack's, like, in the previous universe, it was literally building up to Darkseid. Would Gunn really be that guy? Like, would you go into your own new universe and be like, guess what? I'm gonna do Darkseid now. Can you imagine the ammunition for fan contention then? Like, it would literally be people going at each other. My Darkseid's better than your Darkseid, or the potential of my Darkseid was so much better than what Gunn has currently done with Dark. Like, even for that reason alone, I didn't think they would do it. When he talks about Marvel and Thanos, I think you could still get away with it, obviously. Like, let's just say the Snyderverse continued and we never had the DCU and we still kept building up to Darkseid. Obviously, the comparisons to Thanos would have still been a thing, but they would have both still been a thing. And that would have been fine. There may have been some Thanos Darkseid comparisons physically and whatnot, but, you know. But now, like, again, I do get it. And this isn't even ruling out. It's not even ruling out that one day we could do some new God stuff. It doesn't even mean that in the larger exposition world building of things, that Darkseid couldn't be a character that we see every now and again. And maybe if the DCU is successful way into the future, despite company change to keep it going, that character could be seen more and more. But as of right now, if you ever think that Darkseid's going to be big bad of the DCU and it's all building up to his conquest with the anti-life equation, no. And I think it's completely understandable. This is why I also thought, by the way, that with Salvation, yes, in Salvation Run, the comic story gets into how, it's basically a new Gods training ground. Oh, like the Sard is seeing all these metahumans getting dropped off. Oh, what a perfect opportunity for me to test out some parademons and see what they can do against all of these metahumans and villains dropped off from Argus on Earth. Now, right out the gate, I was kind of like, well, maybe you could argue they could flirt with the idea of new gods, but I really do think that James Gunn would do something different. So basically what he's done is take the concept of Salvation from Salvation Run, with it purely being this metahuman prison planet. But he will inject another concept that he likes from the comics with regards to what further things you could get into. So replace New Gods Training Ground with, for example, the Center, aka Dinosaur Island. And I know you could say, but the Center's like a primordial kind of sentient part of the earth kind of thing. Yes, that's my point though. He would take the concept of it and merge and marry it with Salvation, like adaptations, don't copy and paste, which is why I tried to push, and I don't know if I'm on the ball here, like obviously he would have given me this answer either way, but this is why I asked this in my interview with James.
Are there any other concepts you will be drawing on to bring this planet to life? For instance, I mean, I may be way off here, but the noises Peacemaker heard through the trees really gave me some Dinosaur Island vibes, so...
Oh, that's cool.
No idea if I was on the ball there. It's not like I'm the only one who's had that theory. I've been talking about it for forever, to be honest. It could be true, and he had to just deflect and give some kind of general answer. But it could also just be, no, it wasn't true, and he was like, okay, cool. But, I'm going to steer the question this way. We're going to have to wait and see. But apparently, according to Daniel RPK, DC has registered a Salvation Run trademark for a film. I don't think this is anything to read too deep into, like trademark stuff like this happens all the time. It also goes, as DC Film News says here, for the comic books, the printed materials, luggage, and athletics bags, clocks and watches, clothing, toys. Obviously, we know Salvation is a thing they're doing in movies and whatnot, so this doesn't mean you're also, in addition to Man of Tomorrow, getting a movie called Salvation Run. But you never know. Like, I've even heard some people say, like, what if the Bane Deathstroke project is actually uniquely a project where, in the interim, since in my interview with Gunn, we know that plot threads like this go potentially further than Man of Tomorrow. You could have, like, this... Could you imagine, like, Bane and Deathstroke as a part of this metahuman society that's building on Salvation, having this movie where it's like this Hunger Games kind of, like, crazy thing going down? I know not everyone would be up for that, but... there is something kind of cool that they could do. But speaking of the Center and everything like that, there is this thing going around, which I don't want to show in the videos, because apparently the word on the street is that Warner Brothers are taking the photo down, because apparently the photo was taken from a crew member of Lanterns, and this isn't unusual. Apparently the gift he got, and I'm looking at it in the photo now, maybe you've already seen it, is kind of like a snapback, and it's got the Lanterns logo there, it's got a little tag on the side saying Lantern Season 1, and, it talks about everything the crew did kind of thing. You can basically make that out. But on the Lanterns logo, yeah, you've got the typical Green Lantern logo, but in the middle, you have, like, circles within circles within circles. So not a spiral, but just circles within circles within circles within circles, kind of looking like one of those kind of hypnosis things, but not quite. Now, people are saying, well, this means the Center. Now, again, This is also why I wanted to ask things like this in my interview with James Gunn, with how he could maybe inject the concept of Dinosaur Island and the center to the very planet that Salvation is, because we know Argus haven't done enough due diligence on the planet, and we heard those noises through the trees, so it's kind of like, well, yeah, he could really do that. But the thing is, it's not exactly the way I'm reading it for now. It's not exactly symbolic of the center. A lot of people are saying that it is, but if you see on screen right now, the center more has like this fossilized, because it's like Dinosaur Island. It's this ancient entity of Earth. It has this kind of fossilized spiral, a slight one, right? And even on the book that the cult are using, the kind of little medallion that Martian Manhunter and Batman hold and acquire in the comic looks nothing like this, really. So it feels like, all while I am kind of quite leaning towards the possibility, and I'm a half believer of, okay, Gunn could actually do the center with Salvation, I don't really think this is fantastic evidence for that. Now, certainly, the little circles within circles thing is interesting, but what if it's just simply meant to kind of invoke this emission of light from a Green Lantern ring? I totally see why people were looking at that being like, well, it could be a clue to the larger plot that is in Lanterns. So you do the Lanterns logo and you do a little circle within circles in there. But, you know, I think it's too hard to tell for now. I would love that. I would love, especially with the premise of Lanterns getting into this ancient horror on Earth. Now, you could argue, what if Salvation isn't infused with the center? Let's throw that out the window. But let's just say that Lanterns, as we've talked about before on the channel, still gets into the center nonetheless. That would be pretty cool, because that would be an ancient horror on Earth, an ancient terrifying mystery. You still do a cult in this town that they go and investigate due to this murder in the American heartland in Rushville, Nebraska, and within that town is a similar cult led by frickin' Garrett Dillahunt's William Mason, where it's just like the comic book, and they're kind of sacrificing people, and there's this weird little culty kind of the center kind of fanboy club. It remains to be seen. It remains to be seen. This is why I am dying to get my eyeballs onto anything Lanterns footage-wise. And that's everything that I think I want to dive into today, just because this video is getting along. I know there are other things like Superman hitting number 2 on the Nelson movie streaming charts, which is awesome to see, seeing it go from rank 4 to straight up number 2 with K-pop Demon Hunters at number 1. But I think I've rambled enough in this video. I would just love to hear your thoughts on every story, every topic we got into today. If you are still watching right now, I would greatly appreciate even more support through just simply clicking the like button, clicking the hype button. If you see that there, it just projects this video out there in the algorithm just that little bit more. But until next time, ladies and gentlemen, just thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day. I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.